The morning of my wedding felt like a dream laced in lace and lavender. I, Amelia Cartwright, had waited years for this moment. Marrying Thomas Grayson, the man everyone in Brighton called the perfect gentleman. The sky was clear, the bells chimed softly across the cobbled streets, and my heart fluttered with nerves and joy as I stepped into my dress. My bridesmaids buzzed around the manor like bees in silk, adjusting curls, tying bows, and sprinkling petals. My mother dabbed at her eyes, whispering blessings, while my father paced, as if walking me down the aisle was more terrifying than walking into battle. Everything was picture perfect. Or so I believed. Thomas had always been a mystery. A man of few words but deep glances. We met at university in London. He was studying law, I was studying art. He admired my sketches. I admired his confidence. Our worlds couldn't have been more different, but somehow, we blended. Or so I thought. At the altar, his eyes locked onto mine, but instead of the warmth I knew, there was a flicker of hesitation. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I told myself it was nerves. Everyone gets cold feet. But then, just as the vicar cleared his throat to begin the ceremony, Thomas leaned in. His voice low enough to stir only the fine hairs on my neck. "There's something I need to tell you," he whispered. My heart stuttered. My smile faltered. Time slowed. The vicar began the vows, but I barely heard them. What could Thomas possibly need to tell me at that moment? My lips parted to ask, but he squeezed my hand, silently pleading. "Not here. Not now." And so, like a fool, I nodded. I walked down an aisle not just into marriage, but into something far more uncertain. The ceremony continued, but my mind was a thunderstorm. The reception was held at my family's estate, a grand Georgian manor perched on the cliffs of Brighton, overlooking the sea. Guests raised glasses, laughter echoed through the gardens, but I was watching Thomas. He moved through the crowd with polished ease, yet I saw the tremble in his fingers as he reached for his champagne. I finally cornered him in the rose garden, far from prying eyes and cheerful toasts. "What did you mean?" I asked, my voice sharper than the sea breeze. Thomas looked at me, really looked at me, as if trying to memorize my face. "I didn't want to ruin the day," he said. "But you deserve the truth." I stared at him, heart thudding. "Tell me." He took a breath, then paused. Too long. And then, just before the words escaped his lips, we heard a crash from inside the house. Screams followed. The music stopped. We ran. And I didn't know it then, but whatever Thomas had to say would have to wait, because the day I thought would be the happiest of my life had only just begun to unravel. We rushed through the corridor, my heels clicking furiously against the polished wood floors, Thomas just steps behind. The once elegant manor now echoed with panic. Guests stood frozen, murmuring and wide-eyed, staring towards the east wing. The commotion came from the study, a room always kept locked during events, filled with my late grandfather's collection of rare books and war medals. I pushed through the crowd, ignoring the gasps and curious whispers. The door to the study was ajar. Inside, furniture was overturned, a vase shattered on the floor. Glass crunched beneath my shoes as I stepped in. And there, at the center of the chaos, stood a man I had never seen before, disheveled, drenched in rain despite the sunshine outside, and holding something tightly in his hand. Thomas froze. "No." The man looked up, wild-eyed, and pointed at Thomas. "You. I told you this day would come." Gasps rippled from behind me. My mother clutched her pearls. My uncle muttered something about security. But Thomas didn't move. He simply stared at the man, as if he were a ghost. I turned to Thomas, voice shaking. "Who is he?" He didn't answer. The man stepped closer. "I waited 5 years for this. You thought you could leave it all behind, didn't you? Start fresh with a pretty face and forget what you did." Thomas swallowed hard. "Not here. Not in front of her." But it was too late. The stranger lifted what he was holding. A photograph. He shoved it into my hands. It was Thomas. Younger. Scruffier. Standing next to the stranger. Between them, a girl. Pale. Dark-haired. Laughing in the sunlight. The image was faded, but the emotion in it was vivid. They looked happy. Intimate. My breath caught. "Who is she?" The man answered before Thomas could. "My sister." A chill ran down my spine. "She's dead now." The silence was deafening. Thomas finally spoke, voice hoarse. "It wasn't my fault." The man shook his head. "You promised to protect her. Then you vanished. And she vanished too." I felt the blood drain from my face. The photo in my hand felt like a weight I couldn't drop. The stranger turned to me. "Did he tell you about any of it?" I looked at Thomas' eyes searching, but his face was a mask of shame. "No," I whispered. The stranger laughed bitterly. "Of course he didn't." He stormed out before anyone could stop him. The door slammed shut behind him. Guests murmured and retreated, leaving Thomas and me alone in the wreckage of the study, and the wreckage of our wedding. "I wanted to tell you," Thomas said quietly, "but I thought I had more time." I couldn't speak. I didn't even know where to begin. I stared down at the photograph again. 3 people. A past I'd never known. A future I wasn't sure I wanted anymore. Outside, the sea continued to crash against the cliffs, unbothered by the storm unraveling inside. The wedding was over. No music. No cake. No first dance. Just silence, and the sound of a storm brewing in the lives of everyone who had gathered. Most of the guests had left by morning. Some out of awkwardness, others in disgust. My mother didn't speak to me. She simply nodded when I asked her to stay out of my way. Thomas slept in the guest room. Alone. I hadn't locked the door to our bridal suite. But he never came. I sat on the edge of the bed, the photograph in my lap. I kept staring at the girl. Her smile was soft, mischievous. There was something tragic about her now, knowing how her story ended. I had to know the truth. The next morning, I went back to the study. The staff had cleaned up the glass and put the furniture back. But something about the room felt different now. Almost hollow. I wandered to the bookshelf, my grandfather's pride. I ran my hand along the spines of dusty books until I felt something odd. A breeze. Coming from the wall. I leaned in. One of the panels had a gap. Narrow, almost invisible. I pressed gently, and with a quiet click, the panel slid open. Behind it, stairs. Narrow, steep. Hidden within the manor skeleton. My heart pounded. I hesitated, then took the first step. It was cold. Smelled of old paper and damp stone. I descended slowly, one hand on the rough wall, until I reached a door. Heavy. Iron. Ancient. It creaked open. Inside was a small chamber. A desk. A single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Papers. Photographs. Letters. And a journal. It was leather-bound, initials embossed in gold. E.R. I flipped it open. My name is Eleanor Ross. If you're reading this, I'm probably dead. The words slammed into me. This was her. The girl in the photo. Thomas's past. I read on. She wrote about meeting Thomas. Falling in love. Secrets. A controlling brother. A plan to run away. Then, betrayal. He said he'd come back for me. He promised. But days turned into weeks. Then I saw the article. His engagement. To someone else. My stomach twisted. Could it be true? She continued. I knew I couldn't go back. Not after everything. So I hid. Here. In the manor. Waiting. Watching. Until the day I vanished. I flipped through page after page of heartbreak, confusion, then silence. The last few entries were frantic. Paranoid. She claimed someone was watching her. Following her. Trying to make her disappear. The final sentence stopped my breath. If I disappear, it wasn't suicide. The bulb flickered above me. I closed the journal, pulse racing. I knew now. I wasn't just marrying into a family with secrets. I was walking into a crime. Suddenly, behind me, a creak. I wasn't alone. I spun around. Nothing. Just the shadows, thick and cold. But I knew I'd heard it. A step. A breath. Something. I grabbed the journal and backed out of the room, hand trembling on the iron doorknob. The door creaked shut behind me as I hurried up the stone stairs, 2 at a time. I didn't stop until I reached the study, breathless and shaking. I locked the panel. Whatever secrets this house held, I'd found the first crack. That night, I couldn't sleep. The journal lay on my lap, The final entry burned into my memory. If I disappear, it wasn't suicide. I stared at Thomas's side of the bed. Empty. Untouched. At dawn, I made my way to the kitchen. Mrs. Edgerton, the housekeeper, was pouring tea. She looked at me, hesitated, then slid a cup my way. Couldn't sleep, love? I nodded. Did you know her? She didn't have to ask who. She looked down at her hands. Eleanor was a sweet girl. Too sweet for this place. I leaned in. What happened to her? A long pause. Some say she ran. Some say she drowned herself in the lake. But me. I think she found something she wasn't supposed to. Like what? She met my eyes. Ask Mr. Graham. He knows more than he lets on. Mr. Graham, the manor's groundskeeper. Retired soldier. Quiet. Always watching. I found him pruning the hedges near the east wing, humming a low tune. He saw me coming and straightened. Morning, missus. Can we talk? He nodded. I reckon we can. We sat near the garden, the same spot where Thomas once proposed to me. I told Mr. Graham everything, about the journal, the hidden room, the photograph. He didn't look surprised. I figured one day someone'd find that place, he muttered. That girl was clever. And scared. Did you know her well? He nodded. Helped her hide once. Brought her food. She was terrified of someone. Said they'd promised to take care of it. Then she vanished. My hands clenched. Who promised? He looked at me, jaw tightening. Your husband's father. Lord Montague. He died 5 years ago in a boating accident. Or so I'd been told. I don't think he drowned by mistake, Mr. Graham added. Too many lies in this house. Too many ghosts. The wind picked up, rustling the hedges. I turned back to the manor. From an upstairs window, a figure was watching me. Thomas. He didn't wave. Just stood there. Still. Pale. The wind howled through the trees, and I suddenly felt the chill of a truth buried too deep. Whatever Thomas had to confess, he wasn't the only one who had something to hide. The next morning, I confronted Thomas. He was in the conservatory, nursing a glass of something dark and bitter, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. I went into the west wing, I said. His head snapped up. You what? I found the hidden room. Eleanor's journal. He closed his eyes, lips tightening. I knew this would come back. What happened to her, Thomas? He stared into the glass. She was engaged to my father. He controlled everything about her life. When she tried to leave, he wouldn't let her. I froze. Are you saying he? I don't know exactly what he did, Thomas whispered. Only that she vanished after he sent her a letter asking her to meet him by the lake. That was the last time anyone saw her. My breath caught in my throat. He looked up at me. I've tried to keep the manor away from that darkness, but this place doesn't forget. Something inside me hardened. I need to know everything, Thomas. No more secrets. He nodded slowly. There's another room. My father's old study. It was sealed after his death. No one's been in there since. If there are answers, they're in that room. Later that day, we unlocked it together. The key was hidden behind a loose stone in the fireplace. It clicked open with a low groan, the door stiff with years of silence. Inside, the study was frozen in time. Dust lay thick over dark furniture, and faded oil paintings glared down at us from the walls. Thomas flicked the light switch. Nothing. The room stayed dim, lit only by the stormy light outside. I moved to the desk. The drawers were locked, but the bottom one gave way with a bit of force. Inside. Letters. Dozens of them. All addressed to Eleanor. None sent. My hands shook as I read the first. Dearest Eleanor. You must understand. My control is for your own safety. No one will ever love you as I do. The next letter was darker. I saw you with him again. You think I don't know? You are mine. The rest were filled with obsessions, jealousy, and unhinged promises. I looked up at Thomas. He was stalking her. He nodded grimly. And I think he killed her. That night, I couldn't sleep again. The storm rolled in, thunder crashing over the moors. I heard something. Whispers. Crying. from inside the walls. I followed the sound down the hall, barefoot, heart pounding. It led me back to the West Wing. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, the hidden room was different. The photograph was gone. And in its place, scratched into the wall, "She never left." Thomas insisted we leave the manor for the night. "We can go to a hotel in York," he said, packing in a panic. "Just get away from all this." But I shook my head. "No. I need to understand what's happening. I'm not running." That night, I slept with the journal beneath my pillow, as if it could shield me from whatever watched us. But I dreamed again. Eleanor stood at the edge of the lake, her face pale, lips moving with no sound. Her eyes were wide with terror as shadowy hands reached out behind her. I woke in a cold sweat. Unable to rest, I wandered the manor. In the hallway near the West Wing, I noticed a panel slightly ajar behind an old tapestry. I pulled it aside. There was a staircase, spiraling down into the dark. I hesitated, but some force, I can't explain, pulled me forward. The air grew cold as I descended. The stairs ended in a stone corridor, lined with crumbling bricks and a musty smell. I walked slowly, heart pounding, until I reached a wooden door. It was ancient, bound with iron. I pushed it open. A cellar. But not for wine. The room was filled with old furniture, torn paintings, and shattered porcelain dolls. In the far corner, a rusted iron bed. Shackles still bolted to the wall. My breath caught. This was no ordinary room. I heard it then. A soft sob. Coming from behind a wooden partition. "Hello," I called, stepping forward. Nothing. I pulled the partition aside. There, slumped in a corner, was a skeletal figure, curled as if asleep. The remnants of a silk dress clung to its bones. Around the wrist, an old bracelet. Engraved. E.R. Eleanor Ravenscroft. I screamed. My voice echoed in the Tomb of Secrets. Upstairs, Thomas came crashing down the steps, breathless. When he saw what I had found, he fell to his knees. "Oh God," he whispered. "All this time." We called the authorities. The police sealed off the cellar. The remains were taken, confirmed to be Eleanor's. The manor was declared a historical crime scene. But even after they left, the house felt colder. That night, I stood alone in the West Wing. The wind howled. And then, I saw her. Eleanor. She stood at the end of the hall, no longer hollow-eyed, but peaceful. She looked at me with a soft smile, lips finally moving. "Thank you." And then she was gone. The manor was quiet again, but something lingered. I couldn't shake the feeling that Eleanor's story wasn't fully told. Finding her remains had brought peace, yes, but not answers. Why had no one searched the manor before? Why had her disappearance been so easily dismissed? One morning, while Thomas was meeting the police, I wandered into the attic. The door was stiff, and dust spilled out as it creaked open. Inside, the air was thick with time. Trunks, old furniture, and cracked frames lay beneath dust sheets. I peeled one back and gasped. It was a portrait. A family one. Lady Margaret Ravenscroft stood at the center, proud and cold. Beside her was a man I hadn't seen in any of the other photos. Tall. Severe. His eyes dark. Eleanor stood to the side. Expression subdued. On the back of the canvas, written faintly in pencil. 1897. Margaret, Eleanor, and Lord Percival Ravenscroft. Lord Percival. There was no mention of him in the family records Thomas had shown me. No photographs. No grave. Why had he been erased? I found more portraits, each one with his face scratched out. Then I saw it. A locked trunk in the corner. Heavy. Iron-bound. With effort, I pried it open. Inside were journals. Percival's. Dated from the 1890s. As I flipped through them, horror crept in. His entries grew darker with time. He spoke of bloodlines, of punishment, of keeping Eleanor obedient. His final entries hinted at confinement. He had locked her away. And Lady Margaret had let him. The truth hit me like cold water. Eleanor hadn't vanished. She had been hidden, imprisoned, forgotten. That night, I lit a candle and stood at the base of the staircase to the cellar. I whispered aloud what I had read. And the flame flickered. A warm gust passed by. Then nothing. The manor felt still, as if the house itself had exhaled. The morning mist curled around Ravenscroft Manor like a final embrace. I stood before the overgrown family cemetery at the edge of the estate. Beside me, Thomas placed a newly carved headstone into the earth. Simple. Elegant. Eleanor Ravenscroft. 1876. Finally home. It had taken weeks of negotiation, of historical verifications, but the local council agreed. Eleanor deserved a resting place. And a name. Thomas squeezed my hand. She was waiting for someone to speak for her. We scattered white roses on her grave. The fog thinned slightly, the sun filtering through just enough to warm our faces. But peace hadn't come to all. Inside the manor, rooms still groaned. Whispers still echoed at night. Not angry, just restless. One evening, I returned to the cellar with the journals. I placed them beside Eleanor's resting place, down where her bones had been found. I lit a single candle and whispered, "Your voice has been heard. You are not forgotten." As I turned to leave, a soft breeze brushed my cheek. Then, the candle extinguished itself. That night, the whispers stopped. Weeks passed. Life returned. The manor felt lighter, brighter. On the day of our rescheduled wedding, I walked down the aisle in the garden of Ravenscroft. Birds sang. Flowers bloomed. Thomas waited beneath a willow, a gentle smile on his face. As I reached him, he leaned close and whispered, "This time, there are no secrets." We said our vows with full hearts, with no ghosts between us. But just as we kissed, I noticed something. From the upper window of the manor, a curtain swayed. No breeze. No one inside. Just a soft, watching presence. And somehow I knew. She was smiling.